Welcome to Tony Martignetti Nonprofit Radio, coverage of the National Conference on Philanthropic Planning. We're on the Riverwalk in San Antonio, Texas. The topic right now is Accept Real Estate Gifts, exclamation mark. And my guests are Chase Magnuson and Alan Thomas. Chase is Director of Gift Planning for Real Estate at the George Washington University, and Alan Thomas is Vice President of Advancement for the American College in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to be here with you.
Pleasure to have both of you. You have an exclamation mark after Accept Real Estate Gifts. Chase, why is that? Why is this so important?
Well, it's important because it's one of the largest equity opportunities for both the donors to become philanthropists as well as the charities to benefit from their gifts of real estate. And historically, charities have been either rejecting or not accepting real estate gifts. And I think Alan and I are bringing some pretty good reasons why organizations ought to consider real estate gifts, in addition with some wonderful solutions. I think accepting real estate gifts is a wonderful topic name, but I would make it even more emphatic and just say take real estate, take any kind of real estate.
Okay, what's the reluctance been, Chase? Why have we seen that?
The expertise of the organizations doesn't lend itself well to the real estate industry. They are two separate disciplines, and they haven't put together teams of experts to help solve problems. And there is a great fear of liability that comes with the ownership of real estate. And I think some of the issues that Alan and I are going to be covering today would help solve those problems.
Help reduce the risk, because there is risk, right? But we can minimize it. Is that right?
Yes, indeed we can.
Okay. Alan, let's turn to you and think about how we start to talk to donors. How do we start to cultivate them around thinking about a real estate gift?
Tony, great question. We need to encourage the charities to reach out to the real estate community in order to promote real estate gifts.
So real estate professionals?
Real estate
brokers,
professionals,
attorneys? What do you
absolutely.
mean?
Yeah. Real estate brokers, attorneys, and financial advisors who represent potential donors as well.
Okay.
And we need to get this message out that charities are willing to accept real estate and that there are advantages to their donors to make these gifts to charities. And there are very wonderful mechanisms that will promote this and make this viable for both the donor and the charity.
Okay.
It's actually the charities have been standing in the door rejecting gifts that donors very generously have come to the table with because the charities are not set up to handle it. Over 80% of all gifts from donors offered to charities are rejected out of hand.
Real estate gifts.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the best we can calculate the amount of real estate that's rejected every year is between 16 and 20 billion dollars that could be coming to charities, at least some portion of that, if the charities would go to the trouble of putting together teams of experts to help them manage the process. So it is such a wonderful opportunity for an untapped market to really spur on the charities in a very difficult time in fundraising.
All right, so let's pursue that. What does the charity need to have in place, Chase?
They need to have policies and procedures internally. They need to have a committee of people who make decisions. The plan giving officer, who is the front line agent for the charities, have to have a working knowledge of the types of real estate gifts and how they can be used. And here at this conference, I would venture to say 95 to 98% of all the plan giving officers understand the technical side of it, but they need residential real estate agents for personal residence. They need commercial brokers for investment properties, farm and ranch brokers who specialize in another area, and industrial brokers for corporate gifts of surplus real estate. It really covers a gamut of about 26 real estate specialties, and no one person can have all of that kind of expertise by themselves.
So this may not be appropriate then for the smallest, some of the smaller or smallest charities.
Oh, on the contrary, they ought to team up with a larger, better positioned charity to share in the gift.
Oh, okay. Let's talk about that then. So what can the small and mid-sized shops do that don't have the board or the wherewithal to hire this expertise? What can the small shop do?
Tony, the small charity can partner with a larger charity and that has the expertise and has those contacts and the team sort of driven approach to accepting real estate, and they can partner and split the proceeds between when a property is sold.
Okay.
So there are ways of partnering and helping those smaller charities. Our message today to this universe of folks here at the Plan Giving Conference is to help them understand that there are mechanisms and ways in which to accept real estate that will insulate them from the risk that may be inherent. And they're all, of course, skeptical about the real estate market today, and we need to assure them that there are ways of underwriting acceptance of gifts that should be acceptable to their boards and make them comfortable with.
All right, and we'll have time to get to some of those. Yeah, go ahead, Chase. Looks like you have something.
I was going to say that the small charities, by teaming up with a larger charity, don't expose themselves to costs of managing a process or hiring new people, and it can move very, very smoothly through the process. But what professionals like Alan bring to the table is they've actually closed major real estate gifts. What we hear at these conferences, frankly, are quite often just theories on how it's going to be done. So for practitioners who have closed multiple transactions on all kinds of properties, you're looking at somebody that's very unique in Alan.
And Chase, the two of us.
All right, we're all admiring each other. All right.
Well, no,
and I admire your
it needs
pinstripe
to,
suits.
No, but it needs to be heard out there that somebody's actually doing it rather than just theory on a piece of paper.
It can be done. Well, and your title is Director of Gift Planning for Real Estate, so I imagine you're working. I mean, you're not just sitting back. You're earning your keep.
I'd like to get a copy of that to
George Washington.
I'll get a copy of this for my university so they recognize.
Chase earns his keep! Exclamation mark! With exclamation mark!
3 of them.
Okay. Now, but I want to pursue this a little more. So, a small charity, someone comes to them with the idea of a real estate gift. Wouldn't that charity be reluctant to go to another charity and partner for fear of losing the donor relationship, Alan?
Well, the important thing is that small charity needs to still be the primary contact with that donor, and they need to be assured that they will be in the having that principal dialogue, bringing the larger charity in as an advisor and able to help guide the process. Chase and I talk about process because you need an infrastructure in place and a process in order to be able to accept real estate gifts. If you don't have that infrastructure and process, you're going to be flailing away and in all likelihood probably not accepting real estate gifts when they become available.
Falling into the 80% or so, or 90%
exactly.
that Chase mentioned.
Exactly.
I would go in another direction for the small charity that's looking at $1 million gift and they're not capable of handling it. How dangerous does it have to be for them to lose their donor if the property is handled with a sister corporation and they get $500,000 of the gift? They get zero or they get $500,000. That doesn't seem to be a very hard business decision for the small charity. And whoever they're teaming up with, they've already vetted them and they know who they're dealing with. We all live in a very small community known as the nonprofit world, and you simply cannot afford to go against what you've told another charity you'll do. And we really go out and say to the small charity, we're not going to invade your relationship with your donor. This is a one-off transaction that we might help with.
Have you partnered at George Washington with small charities?
Not yet, but I've done it in my prior career, and we are establishing ourselves to do exactly that.
Okay. Oh, so are you reaching out to the nonprofit community in the D.C. area?
We're here, well, across the country.
Nationally? Okay.
Yeah, and I think Alan would do the same thing.
And that will be part of our message today as well, yes. Yes,
okay.
Tony.
And it need not be in your respective cities, the partner charity.
No, our efforts are national in scope, and so isn't Chase's. We will look at real estate gifts all over the United States.
Okay, Chase, go ahead.
We're actually intergalactic.
So with a word like intergalactic, you don't need an exclamation mark.
Absolutely not. I think that carries the day.
No punctuation required. The word is resounding in its own. Just a period, even a semicolon would be sufficient.
That overdoes it.
Okay, no, but I think it's important for the audience of this show is small and mid-sized nonprofits. I think it's important for them to know that both of your institutions are interested in talking to small or shops that may be offered a real estate gift and don't have the wherewithal to manage it themselves.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I,
Yes.
I would like to
Okay.
I characterize us as mentors. Once we teach the smaller charity how to do it, we'll step away and they never have to share again.
Okay.
But they can also use community foundations and other charities in their community that the donor might want to have an interest in rather than coming to a George Washington University.
All right. Alan, you talked a little about cultivation. You starting to cultivate the gifts through the advisors, but I really should have started with identifying. Let's Alan, let's identify the right donors to be proactively recommending or promoting the idea of real estate gifts. How do we identify the right group to promote these ideas to?
Well, in any kind of planned giving situation, the best donor that you're going to have for your charity is one who has been involved in your charity in the past, who has a strong affinity to your mission, and has been a past giver. So first of all, you look at somebody who is invested in your charity already and would be the most likely prospect for a planned gift of any kind. And then you would want to sort of identify those who in particular might have real estate assets above and beyond the average kind of donor and who might be a very good prospect. So that takes time to cultivate your planned giving donors and understand who those best ones are for real estate gifts.
And what type of real estate might they need to have? I mean, suppose they just have a primary home. Could the type of donor that you described be a candidate for the type of gifts we're talking about with just a primary home?
Yes, Tony. The very first example we will give in our presentation today is called a retained life estate. And that is a gift where a donor gives their residence, it could be a primary residence or a vacation home or a ranch, that they give it to a charity and they retain a life estate to remain there through the balance
Now,
of their lives.
On Tony Martignetti Nonprofit Radio, we have jargon jail. I work in planned giving. I know what you mean, but let's talk about life estate. I want to keep you out of jargon jail.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'll throw you in.
Okay.
Pinstripe soup and all. Doesn't matter.
He
We
can
go right in.
handle it. He's not afraid of you, Tony. He'll come get you.
What is a life estate that the donor is retaining?
A life estate is when you reserve the right to stay in that property through the duration of your lifetime. And it could be one person or joint people. It could be more than one.
Okay.
So if you have a husband and wife who are 75, 76, and they love your charity, they want to give their primary home to you, and they want to stay in that property for the balance of their lives, they transfer the deed to your charity and reserve this life tenancy to remain in that property for the rest of their lives.
So then, when the first of them dies, the survivor continues to live there?
Yes.
And then at the survivor's death, what happens to the property?
Then the charity has complete control over it.
Okay, because it is a new deed. Is that right?
The deed is transferred to the charity when the retained life estate is created.
Right, that's what I meant. At its creation, we're writing a new deed.
Yes.
Where the donor keeps the life residence, life
Yes.
estate, and could be for more than one life, and then at their death, transfer it to the charity.
Yes, and
Go ahead.
There are two other benefits. Should the donors decide they want to move out of the home into assisted living, they can rent the property and get the rental income. Or they can sell the balance of their life estate to the charity for a lump sum. So it's sort of like a spigot for additional income for the donor. It's wonderfully flexible.
Okay.
It is wonderfully flexible. Yes.
And
I'd like to come in a different direction. Alan's giving you the traditional explanation on how you manage and cultivate, but we are also problem solvers. We often get donors that come to us that say, we're tired of managing our property, we need income, we could use some tax shelter, here's our property, give us the alternatives. So we are really weaving a mosaic on different opportunities for lifetime income, tax shelter, and to solve the property management issue. So we're problem solvers at the same time we're cultivating the relationship.
Excellent point.
It's a wonderful role to play.
It is.
The retained life estate. So we've been using the example singularly. We've just been saying at the death of the donor or donors.
Second to die.
The remainder is to the charity, but this can be done for multiple charities. Then, is that right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
and how would the charities then work together when the property is transferred to them at the death of the survivor?
There would be a primary charity that would take title to the property with the responsibilities to make sure it's maintained, that it's insured, and that sort of thing, and then an interlocking agreement with the donors and the other charities on how the eventual proceeds will be divided.
Okay.
Very
so
simple.
It's all worked out
Yes.
while the donors are living, so they know how the proceeds will be distributed across the charities.
Yes.
Yes.
And it becomes very much like a landlord-tenant kind of situation, because your donors remain there, living in the property, caring for it as they have been. So it's like a landlord-tenant situation.
And Alan, who's responsible for the expenses while the donors are living there?
We typically look to have the donor take care of the expenses, the maintenance, the real estate taxes, the insurance, and so that the charity doesn't have to make those expenditures.
Okay.
And we make site inspections because we are the stewards for the organizations that are getting the proceeds to make sure our asset is well taken care of.
So how often is there a site visit?
At least annually.
Yes, annually.
Okay. And what if the donor, Chase, would like to make improvements or renovations or to the property? Do they need to get the permission of the charities? How does that work?
Yes, that is in the original contract for donation, because additions to properties in the eye of the beholder may change the value, hurt it, or do something else because Uncle Fred came in and decided to put a carport in, but he's not a contractor, and when you go look at it, the carport's on the wrong property, and here comes the litigation.
Okay, so there does have to be
We
prior
have the
approval for-
right.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So following our course, we talked about identifying the right donors and cultivating. Chase, let's continue with how do you open this conversation with people who you think are good prospects for the retained life estate that we're talking about?
Well, I think that there are some qualifiers such as their age. You wouldn't open this conversation without having several donor meetings. You ask the question, what are you trying to accomplish? And it's from that point that we move forward. We can eliminate many alternatives in the gifting program of real estate because we've heard the donors are going in a different direction. If things like we want to live out our lives here in comfort, that is the first kickoff to say, look, you can get some tax deduction, you can become, your legacy can be turned into a current philanthropic recognized gift, and you can stay here and we'll help you do that. That's an easy conversation. You often meet the donors at their home, and you can look around. You know an awful lot about your donor base. So I don't, Alan, do you have if Alan's probably got a key question when he comes in the door, where's the deed?
All right, well, now you set him up. Now he better have one because you've set him up. Go ahead.
I gave him
Alan,
enough time anyway.
Alan, would you like to add more to opening that conversation?
I would like to add an additional part of the conversation, and that is that this is a holistic discussion that goes way beyond just the real estate. You need to know your donors in this situation because, for instance, you don't want to take a retained life estate if that's their single asset or predominantly their asset and they don't have any other income or assets in order to meet their future living needs, their medical needs, and you don't want to find yourselves in a situation where they need the worth of that real estate in order to cover their future needs. So that's an additional part of the discussion, which goes beyond just the real estate. So we as plan giving people need to have a complete, broader perspective on what that donor's situation is. So it's very important.
It's all about the donors.
Donor-centric.
Yes,
We've been saying
absolutely.
that for a
All
long
about
time.
the donors.
Okay. All right, so then, Alan, let's continue. We've opened the conversation. The person is willing to hear a little more. Do we start to bring in their advisors, their family? What's sort of the next step, maybe the second or third meeting about this topic?
We absolutely need to bring in their advisors, and we highly recommend bringing in family. The last thing you want is family to be surprised when mom and dad have all of a sudden announced to them, gee, I gave the homestead to XYZ charity, and we're going to stay here for the rest of our lives, but it's gone. So you don't want a direct close family to be surprised in those situations. So you want the advisor, the family, and we need to bring in our expertise with appraisers and conduct our due diligence to make sure that the property is valued correctly and that there aren't any unsuspected sort of liabilities associated with it.
Okay, and I'm hoping we have a minute or so to get into what some of that due diligence is. But Chase, let me ask you, who might some of these experts, or donors, advisors be that we're asking the donors to bring into the conversation?
In addition to their own family attorney, they ought to be talking to a specialist in wills and estates. They ought to be talking to a CPA that would work closely with that professional. The plan giving person should be eventually brought in on a 3 or 4 way conversation, and then depending on the type of property, the plan giving officer would reach out to a real estate specialist on that particular kind of property to get an evaluation, just a range of values, because some donors think their property's worth $1 million and it may only be worth, not to say only, but it could be worth 600,000. So expectations have to be matched, and that's what Alan was talking about. This is a process. You don't do it in one setting. You work through it and that sort of thing. So everybody needs to be on at least the same page on what is the value of the asset we're going to talk about today, and how do you want to use that, and do you want to share that between our organization and others that you have historically given money to, and you can do that all in one package, and we're here to help.
Okay, we have just about a minute left, gentlemen. Alan, let's talk a little about the due diligence. What does the charity or charities working together need to do to make sure that this is an appropriate gift for them to accept?
Chase and I have forms that we've actually developed. A form for the donor to answer 3 or 4 pages of questions, and then we have our own checklist for ensuring that we've covered all the issues, that zoning issues, title issues, environmental issues, having an environmental phase 1 study done. These are all things that need to be conducted in order to know that you're getting a property that you're comfortable with and you know is free of liability and is going to be worth what you're representing to your charity. The last thing you want to do is accept a piece of real estate that later your board finds out has a valuation drastically different than what you've represented, and oh, by the way, there's some sort of environmental issue related there as well. So that's part of the due diligence.
And that brings us really full circle in terms of minimizing the risk. There are potential risks, but we can work in partner with other charities to minimize those risks. We've been talking about Accept Real Estate Gifts, ! With Chase Magnuson, Director of Gift Planning for Real Estate at the George Washington University, and Alan Thomas, Vice President of Advancement at the American College, Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. Gentlemen, I want to thank you very much.
Tony, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
I enjoyed it as well. This is
Thank
Tony
you.
Martignetti, Nonprofit Radio coverage of the National Conference on Philanthropic Planning in San Antonio, Texas.